If adrenal fatigue is not supported by the scientific literature, what should we call it? Great question for Chris Kesser on the Functional Forum in San Francisco.
Finding number 3, adrenal fatigue as a concept isn't really supported by current scientific understanding of the stress response. If we want to maintain credibility and increase the acceptance of functional medicine, as James was talking about in his intro, I think we need to align our diagnostic and therapeutic models with scientific evidence as much as possible. And if you look in the scientific literature for adrenal fatigue as a term, as of a couple days ago, there were 10 results. And they weren't the highest quality results either. But if your patients go searching for adrenal fatigue on the web, they might come across the Endocrine Society fact sheet that says adrenal fatigue is not a real medical condition, and there are no scientific facts to support the theory that long-term mental, emotional, or physical stress drains the adrenal glands and causes many common symptoms. Now, I think this is poorly worded because it almost sounds like they're saying there are no facts to support the idea that stress causes common symptoms, which is absolutely crazy. But I think what they mean to say is there's no evidence to support the idea that those symptoms are caused by drained adrenal glands, and I would absolutely agree with that. On the other hand, there are literally thousands of studies, in fact, 18,320 the last time I checked, looking at the effects of stress on human physiology via dysregulation of the HPA axis and the SAS. But in these cases, it's usually high cortisol or a disrupted cortisol diurnal rhythm or cortisol resistance or any of these other mechanisms that we've been talking about that is the problem rather than low cortisol. And even when cortisol is low, it's because of the brain or central nervous system or tissue-specific mechanisms, not because the adrenals are tired or can't produce it anymore. Now, there are some known conditions like Addisons Disease or glucocorticoid-induced adrenal insufficiency that present with really low cortisol levels, but these are pretty rare. Addison's affects fewer than 200,000 people a year in the US, and the levels of cortisol that are observed in Addison's or true adrenal insufficiency are orders of magnitude lower than what are observed in so-called adrenal fatigue. So if it's not adrenal fatigue, what are we going to call it? This is not a particularly elegant term, but I would argue that HPA axis dysregulation is more accurate, and in fact, HPA axis maladaptation is probably the most accurate term because, as we've discussed, the changes that occur in the syndrome that we're talking about are an attempt of the body to protect itself. It's actually the body doing something smart to protect itself against the effects of chronically high cortisol levels, but those changes end up being maladaptive in the long term. Another option, though, would be to just name the specific dysfunction that we see. So if the patient actually has high cortisol, we would call it hypercortisolism. If they really do have low cortisol, we would call it hypocortisolism, which just names that it's low, but doesn't imply that it's low because of poor adrenal function. Or we would call it disrupted diurnal cortisol rhythm or cortisol resistance or whatever it is.
Thanks so much for watching, and for more great clips like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I've created a special free video just for you. It's called the 5 Steps to Becoming a Leader in Your Wellness Community, and it'll give you some of the starting points on how to position yourself as the leader in your zip code of your health community. All you have to do is click on the link below.